Farm's on Sinking Creek. That's what this road is that we're on right now. And Donna and I both have a real love for Sinking Creek. It's a place that she first came when she came here from Maryland as a little girl, 6 years old. When we got married, I asked her to marry me, and she said, "I will if you don't try to drag me out of Sinking Creek," because I was a musician. She had visions of me going, you know. But that was another thing. I only stayed here in West Virginia because I loved the place so much. I wasn't interested in going out and making more money. I just felt like if I could survive here, I was happy here. It really feels like home to me.
Backward people, they ain't got no voices, hands and faces. Speak to tell their choices. Backwards people, they never have a voice. Backward people, they learn to touch the earth, it's air and water. They know what it's worth. Backwards people, they learn to touch the earth.
Yes, I was born and raised here in West Virginia. My dad and my mother were both West Virginians, and my father had a pretty strident life, especially in his early years. His father died when he was 11, and he was in the 8th grade and quit school so that he could work farms and stuff, whatever he could. And you got to bear in mind that when he was at that age, it was 1935. So it was in the middle of the Great Depression, and there really wasn't money to be had that much, but he worked for odd job kind of things and helped other farms and stuff, and in exchange was given food and things like that, and sometimes clothes. But when he turned about 15 or 16, he joined the 3 Cs, helped build a lot of these state parks here in West Virginia, worked and sent all his money back to his mother and his older sister. And then when he was 17, he joined the Navy and fought in World War II as a gunner's mate in the Navy. So he had a real rough life. Most everything he had, he did. He worked for, and he worked for Carbide for years. When I was a young child, he was a steward for the union at Union Carbide and worked representing the workers in disputes or grievances they had with the company. So I was brought up being a union kind of a Democrat type person who believed in the working class and then working men. And I consider my musical career I was a working man during that time. I didn't really, I mostly played in working class type little bars and places like that where the working class gathered. And those were the songs that I wrote, and the songs that I sung I considered to be working class, you know. I made my living with my hands.
Forever stand in his broken boots and one good suit. Here's to the working man. Oh, the broken boots and one good suit. Here's to the working man.
I wrote this song when Ronald Reagan was elected. and promptly fired the Patco union. And I thought, you know, that was a bad thing to do, especially with all the people that fly and everything. And the only thing those people were asking for was a little less time on the screen, not more money. That's why they were striking, because their hours were ridiculous. And at the end of 8 or 10 hours sitting there looking at those little dots moving around, you get, you know, and I understood that. But anyway, this song is a song that I wrote in response to that. It's called Here's to the Working Man. Well, it's a hard times in these mountains, boys, a hard time in the mines. Everybody I see's on the take. Well, the judges pound out justice as the politician smiles. I swear my aching back's about to break. They're buying up on Wall Street, and I heard it in the news. And they're selling guns and steel and God and grain. And they're buying the politicians, and they're buying the president, and selling the working man right down the drain. Sing me a song for the working man, for the callous on his hands, for the world upon his shoulders, may he forever stand. In his brogan boots and one good suit, here's to the working man. Well, the rich man's got his money, and the poor man's got the Lord, and the working man got nothing that he cannot afford. Yeah, the poor man's got religion, and the rich man's got his gold. The working man's got nothing, boys, it ain't been bought and sold. So he puts in time in the factory, and he slaves down in those mills. He's going down to the hole in the ground, trying to pay his bills. It's a week a month to pay the bank, another for the rent. And by the time the month is all worked out, his money's always spent. So sing me a song for the working man, for the callous on his hands, the world upon his shoulders, may he forever stand. In his brogan boots and one good suit, here's to the working man. Brogan boots and one good suit, here's to the working man.
We had one uncle, her youngest brother, played professionally, and when we were wee little, we'd go see him play. That was a lot of the reasons you wanted to kind of play, wasn't it? Because of her younger brother.
I was in the 3rd grade, and his band came to my grade school and played in the auditorium. And of course, I was real proud. That was my uncle up on stage, you know. But at that point, I thought, this is what I want to do. You know, I was maybe 9 years old or 10 years old, and I thought, this, you know, this looks like something exciting, you know, and it really fired me up. My father grew up, he was born in 24. He remembers some of the things that happened when the unions were first being organized in this state, not just miners, but people at Union Carbide, people at these different large enterprises that formed these unions to protect people and protect their jobs and their right to bargain for a better wage or better working conditions. And when my father, when Reagan fired them, he said to me, they want to see it just like it was back in the 30s, when they could throw you off the machine you were working on if you said anything that was untoward or against the company. They could throw you out the door, and there'd be 100 people out there waiting for that job and would take it for less than they were paying you. And that was the decline that he talked about, and that the unions had protected all those years, was the fact that they were organized into a group that could say, okay, we're out of here, and actually strike and take the very thing that the company needed to run their business, which was the labor. Well, Blair Mountain was like a focal point. And it was all surrounded by mining communities down the southern part of West Virginia when it was all deep mining and people literally crawled around in these tunnels with a pick and a shovel and loaded tram cars by hand. And, you know, it was real mining, unlike it is nowadays when they're sitting on a piece of heavy equipment pushing dirt off the top of the mountain and getting down to the coal level that way. But Blair Mountain was when the miners first tried to organize and be a union, be a United Mine Workers Union. And the federal government sent troops in here because of the disturbances. It was like a National Guard thing, came in and to subdue the miners. And of course, at that time, the government, the judges, everybody was being, you know, controlled by the mines, by the economic interests. So, you know, people tried to bring an injunction or something like that, it was denied. And all these kind of things, they used every legal and economic leverage they could to keep the miners, you know, disorganized, and they would bring scabs in and you know, to fight if miners did strike. But the main incident with Blair Mountain was all the miners tied a red scarf around their neck, and that's where the term redneck came from. Was these miners would tie a scarf so they wouldn't shoot each other on the mountain because it was just like a melee. And if they had that red scarf tied around their neck, they knew they were friendly. But they fought them, and it was the only time in American history where the United States Army actually fired artillery and dropped bombs from airplanes on its own citizens. But one of the interesting parts of that was the guy that led its name was Blizzard, and his wife they called Ma Blizzard, and she lived along the New River, which is the route that the troop train came out of Charleston up the New River to Blair Mountain. So she heard through the grapevine, or by whatever means, that there was a troop train coming with American soldiers on it, armed soldiers who were going to put down this rebellion of miners. And she literally went down along the railroad tracks and dug under the tracks and placed dynamite and blew the tracks so the train couldn't get there. And I thought that was, you know, that was wifely support and love, you know, for their husband and what the husband's plight was, you know.
For as Mother Jones said, we must pray for the dead, but fight like hell for them that's still alive. Oh, it's fair.
Yeah, they've tried to. Blair Mountain right now is a National Historic Site because of the battle. And they've been trying for years to take it and remove it from that list where they can go in there and mine again on it and actually do strip mining on it. But it's, you know, it's a monument to the workers and a monument to, you know, what people have struggled to do, and the rights that a lot of workers have right now were bought in blood back in the 20s and 30s by these folks who were willing to stand up to the company and say, you know, we're people, we're real, we need relief, you know, from these conditions. And then, you used to be able to go in the Cultural Center in Charleston, which is our state capital, and they had a diorama around the room about miners and about that whole struggle with Blair Mountain and the organization and Mother Jones and those people that came in here and helped gather the miners together and inspire them to stand for what they believed. And when that Republican governor got in there, they took all that down. It's like during the Bush administration, the Labor Department, that's what the Labor Department's about, is the working man. And whoever was running the Labor Department at the time, I heard that he caught hell because they said he was dealing too much with labor. I mean, that's what the hell he's supposed to do. You know, he's representing the workers of this country, the Labor Department, you know, and they were chewing him out because he was too concerned with labor. You know, it's crazy, you know, that they take these things that people have died for and just throw them down a toilet as convenience allows, you know. or different political winds. The thing my father instilled in me was to be a hard worker and to, if I believed in something, to do it. And that came to a point when I was 15 that we were at odds with each other because of my pursuit of music and the fact that he didn't agree with that. But I told him when I left that I was doing exactly what he'd taught me to do, was to follow my dream and to stand for what I believed in. And it took him about 3.5 years after that before he finally realized that that was exactly what I should have done.
I think Dad thought that he was, you know, throwing away all this potential, knowing that it's what a hard life a musician would probably be, you know.
And it was.
And it was, you know, but it was what he needed to do to be himself and to fulfill who he was going to be.
When I was 12 years old, I developed a kidney problem where one of my kidneys almost quit functioning and the other one was severely strained to keep up with it. And I was on restricted activity. I was pretty much bedfast for about 4 months that summer. And I loved to read, but I got sick of reading. And so my father asked me at one point, you know, what I would like to do. And I told him if he would buy a guitar for me, that I would learn how to play guitar. And that would be something I felt that wouldn't have a finishing. The guitar was an alternative challenge to me that I could keep progressing on and not feel like I'd reached the end of the chapter or whatever, you know. And so that's what literally got me into music in the beginning, was poor health. And it's kind of ironic, but that's what took me out of the music field at 65 years old, was poor health. In Vietnam, I was exposed multiple times to Agent Orange. I mean, when you're an infantryman, that's what you're doing. You're going into areas that have been defoliated, looking for bunkers or weapons caches or food and that kind of thing, you know, of the enemy. There was several times that I literally would hear a helicopter fly over and look up and feel something tapping me in the face, misty, and it was Agent Orange. So I developed pancreatic failure from Agent Orange exposure, which put me into being diabetic, which in turn gave me diabetic neuropathy, which is the nerve damage from the exposure. So what happened eventually was I couldn't tell how tightly I was holding a pick, and consequently I would drop it in the middle of a song. And it finally came to the point where I realized I wasn't going to be able to play plectrum-style guitar, which I had done for 50-some years. And it just brought my style to an end at that point, you know, 3.5 years ago when I quit playing, quit performing. And just in the last few months, I've been trying to develop a different style of just using my fingers to play the guitar. When I was 15 and a half, I started actually playing music, and it was mainly with groups at the time. I was in soul bands because that was the period of Motown and all that musically, and so I started out playing in larger groups, some of them 6-7-piece bands, and played soul music, and I did that for 6 years.
I mean, I was still in grade school when he first started playing professionally in that soul band. He was the only white person in it just as a kid, and he was probably only maybe at the most 14 then?
15.
15,
yeah.
something like that. So that'd make me like 11 or 11 and a half. We toured with a band called Black Oak, Arkansas in 72 because it was getting people to sign up to vote. When
I was 21, I was drafted into the Army and was trained as a light weapons infantry, and went through basic training, and went through AIT, advanced infantry training in Louisiana. And before I knew it, I was in Vietnam. And I spent 6 months in the field in Vietnam as an infantryman, and had some horrendous events happen around me and to me. And after 6 months, I came to the conclusion in my mind that I couldn't do it anymore. And I didn't realize it at the time, and didn't really until years later, but I was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And I refused to fight, threw my gun down, and was given an Article 15 for refusing a direct order. And I did hard duty for 30 days, KP from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening, and guard duty from 6 in the evening till 6 next morning. That was a 30-day ordeal where I was literally on call for the entire period. I was originally threatened with desertion, or not desertion, but cowardice in the face of the enemy. And I told them, you know, that they could charge me with that if they wanted to. They said they were going to send me to Leavenworth and put me on the rock pile for 2 years. And I said, that's fine. I'll have calluses on my hands, but I won't have innocent blood on my hands, because I felt that a lot of the things that we were doing as soldiers were wrong. It just came to a point that I couldn't be a part of it anymore. You know, it was just a personal choice. I didn't, they tried to offer me a conscientious objector status, in which case I would have been a chaplain's assistant and probably would still have had to carry a pistol. And I just refused it. I said, I'm not a conscientious objector. I believe that certain wars had to be fought, but this isn't one of them. And it's not right. I don't feel right about it. I don't feel like being a part of it. And so literally a social worker was who determined that I was unsuitable. They sent me to a couple of chaplains, and much to my dismay, both of them told me that they felt that, you know, that I should go fight, that it was the right thing to do, you know, because these people weren't believers in Christ. And I got real mad at the second chaplain they sent me to and told him that he should take the crosses off of his collar and throw them in a trash can if he actually believed that. And I understand he was an Army guy, but I think he should have been a chaplain first. And then 40-some years later, 3 of my old buddies from my unit came to see me over in Ohio, where I was playing on the Ohio border, and they convinced me that I should go file with the VA over the things that had happened to me over there, and they actually convinced me to that they weren't abandoned by me, that I did what I had to do, and they were still my brothers, which was a great thing for me to realize. That, and that was my main guilt feeling all the years after I quit, was that I had abandoned my friends. It wasn't so much that I abandoned the Army, but I had some real close friends there that I would have died for and that would have died for me. I literally wrote Nui Ba Din 20 years after I was home. And that kind of was a log jam that was built up inside me. I never talked about the military. When I came back, I got rid of all my clothes. I gave my Army stuff to the Salvation Army in Parkersburg, and I threw away and burnt my photographs from Vietnam. I literally tried to bury all of that, and not to much good. I mean, it still came up to me all the time, but I didn't speak about it with other people. I didn't tell war stories. I didn't, acknowledge the fact that I was a veteran until years and years later. I wrote Nui Ba Din, and that kind of broke that loose because of the fact that I would perform the song, and these guys would come up, unbeknownst to me as veterans, but they would come up and say, "I was there. You told my story," and it was it was cathartic for me, but it was also, it helped me to begin to interact with other people who shared my experience that I had not really been able to talk about all those years. And it was good for me in that sense, that it got that off of my chest, but it also woke people around me to, my experience, and gave me a chance to share and to talk with other people that had been through the same thing. Because unless you were there, people don't know. I mean, I came back, I felt like a stranger in my own hometown. All my friends had changed, and it wasn't them that had changed, it was me. But I felt that there was this, well, not necessarily a wall, but a difference between how I felt about the world and how they obviously did. And even familiar places to me were strange to me, and people, and even family. My wife and I broke up within a few months after me coming back, maybe a year, because everything had changed, and it was me that had changed. And it's like that old saying, you can never go back home, and it's true.
I've seen some bad times, boys, and it's a hard, cold world. I've seen the wrong that men can do to man, but I never seen a bad or harder time than the time I learned my lessons at the feet of Wopat Den. Way down south in the Parrot's Beak in the land of Vietnam. Never seen a hotter day or a darker night, where the sightless terror growled with every sound, where the air was thick and dangerous, hard to catch a breath, with the bullets and the skeeters flying bound. Oh, we rode a winged horse all along the border. Across the Mustang Trail we left dead men. They were a hero, every one of them there, than ours alike. Their blood the same damn color in the mud neath Wopat Den. Red, black, red, white, red, yellow at the feet of the Black Virgin. Oh, we dug our holes deep in the hobo woods, with what we carried on our backs and in our hearts. And we struck a lonely vigil in a frightful van, and we struck a blow for freedom at the feet of Wopat Den. We were slaves in the chains of freedom at the mount of the Black Virgin. And we both were children, we were fodder for that cannon. We grew old and we died with what we learned. When the knowledge pierced our beings just as surely as hot lead, we the living were, the dead returned. And we marched in the jungle and on the streets of D.C., and we stood and we fought for what we thought was right. But they spit on us in Oakland and they shot us down at Kent. We were sons of liberty through freedom's blackest night. The sons of liberty in freedom's darkest night. I've seen some bad times, and it's a hard, cold world. I've seen the wrong that men can do to man, but I've never seen a bad or a harder time than the time I learned my lesson at the feet of Wopat Den. Way down south in the Parrot's Beak in the land of Vietnam. Way down south in the Parrot's Beak in the home of Ho Chi Minh. Way down south in the Parrot's Beak at the mount of the Black Virgin.
Down the southern part of West Virginia, and actually all over West Virginia, but there's a great concentration of it in the southern part of the state, or a lot of coal operations. Some of them just small family-run outfits, and some of them are large, huge conglomerates that are, world class as far as their scope of the business. But West Virginia has always been a place that has been dependent on coal, and it's a big part of the state's economy and control and power are the energy interests in this state. And in particular, Buffalo Creek was a coal mining region where a deep mine was being mined, and they were taking all the tailings, which are the slag and stuff like the slate and the overburden and those kind of things, and piling them across the hollow as refuse. And it's called a gob pile, G-O-B. And it's a mixture of, loose material and chunky rocks and all this kind of things. But they had been dumping it there over the whole course of several years. And it had literally blocked off this small creek and formed a pond behind it, a lake, actually. And in the spring of the year, the ice melt and the rainfall, the spring rains, caused this dam to collapse. And it went down Buffalo Creek Hollow. And there were residences all the way down through there, and 500 people were displaced housing-wise from the flood, and 125 people were killed. And when this happened, the governor of the state, Arch Moore, and I always throw in who shall remain nameless after I've named him, he came on the news and said it was a terrible act of God, that this flood was a terrible act of God because of the rain that fell and the snow that had melted. But a local coal miner down in that region remarked after Arch Moore made this speech that he didn't see God driving the bulldozer. And the actual cause of it was the dam collapse that had been placed there over, an extended period of time and allowed all this water to back up behind it. And so a friend of mine who was working with the DNR was actually called in to go down there and pull bodies out of the mud, and children and people who had drowned in the flood. And he immediately came to visit me, and I was living in a hunting cabin up in Pleasance County, West Virginia, along the Ohio River. And he was so mad when he came back that he was just everything he said just went right straight to my heart. And my brother Stephen and I sat down, and Steve did most of the lyrics. He's a great poet, and I've done several of his songs, lyrics, and made music to him. But he wrote the bulk of Buffalo Creek, and I added a couple of verses into it in the chorus. Now Buffalo Creek swelled and broke, and all that water came roaring down, sweeping away the homes and lives of a West Virginia town. In that cold and raging flood, more than 100 people drowned. Some say the flood was caused by rain, and some said melting snow. Deep down in my heart, I believe the coal mine bosses know. Well, they strip mine all the topsoil and they uproot all those trees. They killed the folks in Buffalo Creek and shrugged the blame with ease. They don't give a damn for life or land, they roll on like they please. Some say the flood was caused by rain, some said melting snow. But deep down in my heart, I believe the coal mine bosses know. Then the governor said the flood was just an act of God's own will. But the strippers tear these mountains down, it's enough to make you ill. The rape of Appalachia for the greenback dollar bill.
Some say the flood was caused by rain, some say melting snow. But deep down in my heart I believe the coal mine bosses know. Buffalo Creek, it's a coal mine boss's show. Buffalo Creek, how could they sink so low? Before our eyes, you know the trip mine bosses trade our lives for nickels and for dimes. Well, I beg you folks to stop these men, don't you let this happen twice. You can see those people drowning there, can't you hear their mournful cries? Well, I hear them through the falling rain, they haunt me in the snow. Buffalo Creek, it's a coal mine boss's show. Buffalo Creek, when will you people know? And when will you folks tell these boys to pack their gear and go? Way down in Willow Island, on the Ohio River shore, I'll tell you about some working men who gambled at death's door. On a clear, cool April morning, in a West Virginia town, the cooling towers were going up when the men came tumbling down. They were pouring around a
Well, that's the whole thing in that Willow Island song that I wrote it around, was the fact that that company gambled with those people's lives. And that's why that whole song is an analogy of a card game. 51 are the cards in the deck. The last card, and I state that in there, the last pale shadow was the ace of spades, and the last card dealt was death. And I even had a guy tell me, now this is, you know, how superstitious these mountains are and people in them, but a guy literally told me that right before that fell, when they were actually bringing in the crane with the big bucket of concrete on it to pour a new run, the crane dumped a whole, instead of being over the molding that it was to pour into, it dumped its weight half and half of it hit the scaffolding. And the guy said that he looked up there when it started peeling, and it literally went all the way around and back to the point. Now you can imagine if you were on that side, watching it peel around, and none you were going to go down too, and just watching it come around to you. But the guy told me he saw a shadow up there flickering around like a person running, but he said it wasn't a person, it was just a dark shadow flitting around that. And he said it may have just been dust rising as it was peeling loose or whatever, you know, from their feet, you know, old dried up concrete and shit on the scaffolding itself. But he literally said he saw a shadow darting around that ahead of where it was peeling off. And I said, that was death, man. He was going around tapping everybody, saying, you're next, you're next, you're next. And that's why I come up with that idea about a card game, you know, that they literally went in there and gambled away those guys' lives for the sake of making more money by pushing that deadline and trying to get it done, because they got a bonus. They were offered a bonus if they could complete the job on time, an extra 50 grand or whatever it was, a finishing early bonus.
45 men on the scaffold, 6 men on the ground, 51 cards in the gambler's deck with the last card dealt face down. Mon Power was the dealer, and you know they stacked the deck. The last failed shadow was ace of spades, and the last card dealt was dead.
Yeah, I'd like to say something about the song. Don and I have been together for 27 years, and when I first met her, this song kind of just popped out. It was, a lot of people call this a ditty because a lot of my fans learned the words to it, and when I would play it, they'd sing along, you know. So, but it's a heartfelt song, and even though it's a simple tune, it's got my feeling in it for my lovely wife that I am proud to be married to for the last 27 years. It's called My Brown-Eyed Country Girl.
Well, I got a girl back in Gill County. She's my country woman, boy, she ain't no townie. She's a dancer, she's a sweet romancer. When I got the question, she's got the answer. There ain't nothing in this whole round world like the loving my brown-eyed country girl. She can ride a pony. If she rides away, it's gonna make me lonely. She lives back in the Sinking Creek Hills. She tells me country living giving her a great big thrill. There ain't nothing sets my heart at world like loving my brown-eyed country girl. I love my brown-eyed country girl. Loving my brown-eyed country girl. Loving my brown-eyed country girl. Loving my brown-eyed country girl. Country girl. Money, but we're living in the land of milk and honey. 'Cause we got something that money can't buy. You know we got our love, and that's worth a try. Yes it is, and it gets me high. I don't need those diamonds and pearls, loving my brown-eyed country girl. I'm loving my brown-eyed country girl. Loving my brown-eyed country girl. Loving my
I don't know if she has her tongue stuck out, but her mother would do the same thing. She'd get a drink of water, and they all do it a little bit, but her mother would just have her tongue stuck out about 2 inches. It just would look hilarious, but I don't know if she's doing that or not. That was good, huh? Boy, she was thirsty today. But this place here, it was just opportunity as far as how Mike and I got to live here. But I don't think it would matter where on Sinking Creek. I just love all of Sinking Creek. It's just, for some reason, this place has always had a magical attraction to me, and still does. So I think I was telling you earlier that I had a stipulation when Mike and I got married that I said, you know, I mean, yeah, I want to marry you, but there's one thing I got to be sure about. And I said, I hope you'll never ask me to leave Sinking Creek because I just love this place. And he said, oh no. He said, this is where I want to be too. And I believed him, but still there were a few years I was kind of nervous. I was like, he might change his mind. He might not like living in the country as much as I think, but that was just, he was in his element. So it worked out, thank goodness, for both of us. Mike has always liked the idea of being able to pass his music on to somebody. And Mike had 3 boys, and he's got a daughter. And when they were kids, they would come and stay with us off and on. And I had my 2 nephews and my niece, and we just had so much fun with all those kids. After we'd been married a while, so many years later, his middle son, Ben, came to live with us. And he'd just been having some issues where he lived in Maryland, and typical teenage stuff, but he just needed a change of scenery. So we talked about it. I was like, yeah, let's do it. And when he first came and Mike went to get him off the bus and brought him home, in my head, I was still picturing this kid, you know, this young boy. And he's still a young boy, but he was, you know, 15 years old, you know, chunky fella, you know, a young adult. And I was like, uh-oh. It gave Mike and him a chance to bond even more than they, you know, just gave them a chance to get to know each other even more. But the music was the best thing. He started, you know, playing music and wanting to learn. And Mike was just so excited to think, okay, I can, you know, have Ben to pass this on to. And then I think it was 2002 that Ben died. He was killed in a car accident. And so that was just, you know, that was real hard for everybody. So Mike had hoped to have somebody to pass his music on to like that. And so it's just sad that didn't get to, you know, that Ben didn't get to live long enough for that to happen. Yeah, that definitely, I mean, you know, it just, that knocked a big chunk out of Mike's life and everybody that was connected to Ben. So many people here loved him. That meant a lot to us too. You know, obviously his family, you know, it hurt everybody, but there were so many people here, fans of Mike's, who were just, they were just so sad too, because they loved Ben also. I mean, he made a big impression on a lot of people. And I just, at his funeral, there were just so many people that showed up and were so supportive, which is another thing I love about West Virginia. People will be there for you. I mean, they really are here.
I went over to my son's house, Ben, on his birthday one year and bought him a knife, a buck knife, and took it over to him. And what he was doing when I got there was he was edging this poppy bed, digging up the ones that had encroached out into the yard. So he said, hey, Dad, do you want a couple of poppies? And I said, sure. So he gave me like 3 or 4 little starts, and I brought them out here and planted them. And they bloom right around his birthday. His birthday will be Sunday on May 8th. And he was born on Mother's Day, and of course it's going to be Mother's Day this year again. But every year now, and these poppies are spread out, they're literally all in this bed now. But every year right around his birthday, these bloom. Reminds me of the gift of him giving me the poppies, and then the, you know, the gift that his whole life was that I got to share with him. But I wrote a song. I've written several songs in the last 3.5 years since I quit playing. This is a song that's in a tradition of Hazel May Dickens, who's one of my heroes of West Virginia, and it's actually a hog holler, you know, where you just sit back and you scream out the lyrics, and you know, and that's what this song is. And it's also in the feel of the old Bob Dylan song Oxford Town. It has that same feel to it, and it was one of the inspirations of this particular style of song. This is a song called Marcellus Shale. We've got a lot of drilling going on in West Virginia now, and the thing that worries me more than anything is water quality, because West Virginia has had some great water. I mean, almost all these areas in West Virginia have sweetwater springs and wells that are hand-dug wells down 20 feet, and you hit good water and that kind of thing, and That's the thing I worry most about, is the quality of the water here. If this rampant drilling and fracking keeps happening, you know, in this state. Marcellus Shale, are you heaven or are you hell? Only time itself will tell, and only fate might ring that bell. These hills are filled with wells and springs, fathers of rivers and mothers of streams, but the fracture bombs keep going down to the fracture table underground. 1,000,000 gallons and maybe more fresh water just to punch that hole, and where do all the poisons go? It bothers both my heart and soul. Marcellus Shale, are you heaven or are you hell? Only time itself will tell, and only fate's gonna ring that bell. A little bit of Marcellus Shale there. Anyway, I came up with this probably 30 years ago down in Braxton County. I was burning a lot of hickory through my stove, and we heated with wood, and a lot of tops were out in the yard. And this one winter, I was particularly bored and I had a real bad case of cabin fever, and I drug in a piece of this hickory and put a string on it and a contact mic, which is right there, and I just started messing around with it. Well, I took it to a biker bar, and they absolutely went crazy. So I thought, well, I'm onto something. So at that point, I refined it by putting a tuning gear on it, because that was the main problem with my first one. You couldn't keep it in tune. It was just however tight you put the wound on it was where it played. So now I have a capacity to tune it. And let me check the tuning right now, make sure I'm fairly close. But I'll play a little thing here. This is a medley of Appalachian songs that have to do with chickens. I'm quite fond of chickens, and so this contains 3 or 4 different Appalachian tunes. Hartford Mountain, hey, ding-dong, dilly-eye, hey, so many pretty girls I can't count them. Hey, ding-dong, dilly-eye, hey, dilly-eye, dilly-eye, hey, hey, ding-dong, dilly-eye, 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 hey, ding-dong, dilly-eye. Well, I bought me a rooster, boy, and I put him in that barn just to keep my old hen warm. Say, cluck, old hen, buck, 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 cluck all day, buck, buck, cluck, old hen, buck, buck, cluck all day. She clucked all night, she clucked all day, and she clucked all night. Sourwood Mountain, hey ding-dong dilly-eye, hey, so many pretty girls I can't count them. Hey ding-dong dilly-eye, 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 hey ding-dong dilly-eye, 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 hey ding-dong dilly-eye, bong ding 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 down down, bong ding pop down down, pop 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 down 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 down. Bought me a rooster, boy, and I put him in the barn just to keep my old hen warm. Say, cluck, old hen, buck, 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 cluck all day, buck, buck, cluck, old hen, buck, 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 cluck all day. She clucked all night, and she clucked all day, and she clucked all night. She loved that rooster, cluck all night.
Mike's met a lot of these young kids who really want to start learning his music, and that means a lot because it kind of helps to take up, you know, some of that loss. And these kids are great. I mean, they really want to learn music, Mike's music the way that, you know, Mike does it as much as they can. And it's just good for Mike to know there's somebody that, you know, when he can't perform anymore, there'll be somebody that can still go out there and do what, you know, keep those songs alive. But yeah, I'm glad these guys are working with Mike, and Mike really likes it too. He's really enjoying Dustin and DW.
Down that street, dead in town, whiskey moon, sad-faced clown with a jaded soul, jaundiced eyes. But his piano tunes could make you cry, and a night so long that it just won't pass. Never empty whiskey glass. Time hangs its frozen chandelier in some forgotten yesteryear, when the laughter flowed above the din, ballroom dancers lauded him, and he played his baby grand all night. Not this old untuned upright. But now he plays an East End bar, all drinks and tips in the mason jar. And it's a long way down to an East End bar, much further down than you ever think you are. Now his heart aches like an abscessed tooth, and loves a glance from the corner booth. Neon flickers in a tobacco haze. It's a long time since the good old days. To an East End bar, broken dreams, where hope is lost within smoke screens. Dropped some bills into his jar, stepped out to count my lucky stars. But it's hard to know what some men need to keep their lives from going to seed. But now he plays an East End bar, all drinks and tips in the mason jar. And it's a long way down to an East End bar, much further down than you'll ever think you are, than you think you are.
This is my friend DW. He's been my student since last fall. He's trying to learn my material, learn my songs.
I've roughly got about 15 or 16 of his songs down. almost to where Mike wants them. You know, he really, really wants them to be a certain way. And I've been playing his songs wrong for years. And finally, Mike came to me and he said, listen, if you want to learn my songs, let me teach them to you the right way. And I've been seeing Mike since I was 12 years old. Like he said, my parents used to take me into the bars. When I was 12 years old, I saw him open up for Black Oak, Arkansas, and David Allen Coe down at Laidley Field the very first time I saw him play.
You know, the things that I'm trying to show him are I'm in a relearning process myself right now because of my neuropathy, that playing pick style for, 55 years, and then all of a sudden I can't feel the pick anymore. So I'm learning to play again. My right hand, anyway, is relearning the guitar. And by him coming up every week and me sitting there and trying to show him what I did with a pick, but I'm having to adapt that now to what I can do now. So it's been really good for both of us. It's given me a chance to refine what I did originally, which I can't do anymore. So I've got to revamp it. And by him coming up and saying, show me this song and show me that song, it makes me, try to rethink what I was doing before, to where I can pass it to him. Maybe not in the original form, but at least in a format that, is where he can learn it and take it from there,
Thank you. By the way, this is my friend D.W. here. He's been working with me some this winter on trying to learn some of my materials. So he's doing a pretty good job. So. Yeah. Like I know I should, but everything is gonna be alright. One of these days I'm gonna settle down, quit my rolling town to town. Fall down, jump up, turn myself around, listen to the highway sound. You make me feel so good, you do it every time. Well, stand me long and the rides is few, but I walk all the way just to get to you. Fall down, jump up, turn myself around, listen to the highway sound. Give me one more kiss before I have to leave. Oh, Mama, won't you please don't cry? Mama, won't you please don't grieve? My thirsty boots have been filled with sand. It's hard time loving a rambling man. Fall down, jump up, turn myself around, listen to the highway sound. Gotta fall down, jump up, turn myself around, listen to the highway sound. Fall down, jump up, turn myself around, listen to the highway sound. Thank you. Turn around 2 times and you're an old man, with your death not far behind. Well, my yesterday's dead and my todays are old. My life will soon be gone. just rambling and gambling, singing my song like tomorrow might never come. You see, I've got the laughing river, got the crying rain, and a blue sky up above. Highway rolling down the countryside that takes me to the one I love. I got my big wheel roll, I got my little wheel spin. Won't you take me back home again? I got my big wheel roll, I got my little wheel spin. Won't you take me back home just one more time? A big wheel roll and my little wheel spin. Won't you take me back home again?